This has been a decade in the making. I now have my very own in-home food photography studio, and I would love for you to come and see its transformation. Hi, I'm Rachel Korenek, professional food photographer, helping you take incredible photos that look good enough to eat. A quick backstory, in 2023, I had to take a step back from my business, and my family and I moved from Vancouver to Toronto. So all of my photography gear, my props was packed up, and when we eventually settled and bought a house, one of the items on that list was to have a room large enough and functional so that I could have an in-home studio. And we managed to do that, and I'm very, very grateful. So in this video, I'd love to take you behind the scenes to see how I transformed this simple white room into a functional and creative home studio. The thing that I was most excited about for my photography studio was I wanted to paint the studio. So I have spent so many years shooting in white and dull gray spaces, and I just craved some color. I wanted it to feel like a big creative hug. It took me months though to pick the perfect paint color. And because I'm a food photographer creating a food photography studio, I just felt that it would be so appropriate to have food in the name of the paint color. So that's what I set out to do. And I chose two paint colors by Benjamin Moore. One is whipped mocha and the other was chocolate mousse. I know that my Aussies are like cringing inside because they heard me say mocha, when as an Aussie, I would say mocha. But living in Canada for so long, pronouncing it mocha, if I go and order a mocha, nobody knows what I'm talking about. So I'm very trained to say mocha. Sorry. The reason I chose two paint colors was I wanted to do a lime wash effect. Now, I didn't choose lime wash because I was limited in the colors I could choose, and it is very expensive. So I went ahead and chose two paint colors, and I used a technique to create a foam lime wash effect. So to do that, we take a large stain brush and we're going to apply the two different paint colors to the opposite ends of the brush. Then when we're painting on the wall, we want to do large sweeping brush strokes with very light pressure so that we're not mixing the colors too much, but blending them just enough to get this beautiful textured effect. So I simply did that around the entire room. It was actually very therapeutic. The edges are very painful and difficult because it's very hard to get that sweeping motion and a crisp edge. But doing one coat allowed me to make all the mistakes. I was able to get my technique down, and by the time I did the second coat, I really felt like the paint color was coming together. So you could stand back and look at any areas that felt like they needed a touch up, if there was too much blending, or if there's too much of one color standing out, if it felt too dark. And so I just went and touched up the entire room. Now, it didn't take me that long. It probably took me 2 half days waiting for the paint to dry in the middle. I am obsessed with how it turned out. It is just exactly as I imagined. And I thought it would be a little bit too dark, but it's just actually perfect. So I'm really glad that I took that leap and chose two colors that felt a little bit bold. Once the painting was done, we went ahead and changed out some of the fixtures in the room. So we swapped out the outlet and switch covers for black. I added some brass hardware to the doors. And I went ahead and changed the light fixture in the room because I absolutely hated what was here before. And the ceiling is quite low, so I needed a flush mount that was going to allow me to still move my equipment around the room. So I chose this really sleek black and brush gold flush mount. And to top it off, I added a fancy bulb just to tie everything together. Now, after painting the room this color, granted, white does feel bigger. So it did feel a tiny bit smaller, so I decided to hang a mirror just to open up the space a little bit. So I found this really funky, wavy, frameless mirror that I wanted to hang on the far wall. Now, it was very heavy and it had 2 anchor points, so it took us a little time to hang it, and my husband and I were going on the rule of measure twice, cut once, but I think we measured like 15 times. It took us a long time to hang it, but we got it spot on. Now the room was starting to come together. It was time to build the cabinets. So finding cabinets that looked sleek but weren't going to break the bank was actually a difficult challenge. but I did find some in this beautiful black color that had this warm wood inside. Everything these days comes and has to be assembled at home, so this is a challenge. These two things took me a day and a half to create because the instructions are actually wrong in several places. So I would build it and I'd get to a point where like, this doesn't work. So I'd have to take it apart and try to figure out what the instructions were supposed to say and then build it again. However, when I finished them and I set them up, it just was the perfect cabinets for the room. It really had the feeling and the look that I was going for. So now that they were up and that part was done, I was excited to move on to the next part, which was going to be putting my props in there. But before I was finished, I wanted a few little decor pieces to come into the studio. So it is a working studio, so I need surfaces that I can put things on. Studios get messy, as we all know, so I didn't want to bring too many pieces in. But I also work in this space and I wanted to come in here and just feel inspired. So I just wanted a few things to really bring it to life. So I added this sleek glass lamp in a color that matches the wall, this large black ceramic vase that I could put seasonal florals in, a few books, and I added my life manifesto. So this is by a very talented illustrator called Emma Hands and a dear friend of mine. And I had this piece commissioned because I wanted to look at it and I wanted to be reminded of the things that are important for my life and how I want to live my life. So you might be thinking a photography studio isn't finished without props. That's what we're going to get to in part 2 of this 3-part series. Now let's take a look at the transformation from this basic white room to this beautiful and functional studio. So here we are, my beautiful new in-home food photography studio that I cannot wait to create in. And it's the most interesting thing because I had been away from photography for 2 years due to life circumstances. And when I built this space and everything was in and I sat down in it, I felt like no time had passed, like nothing had changed. And I was so surprised by that. I mean, it was a beautiful surprise and it just made me think this was the perfect choice. Everything that I chose really allowed me to feel like the creative that I am. And I'm super excited to create in this space. So I'd love to know in the comments below what you think about the new studio and what you love the most about it. If you have any questions on the faux lime wash technique, just let me know. Thank you for watching.